Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you? This is our 41st episode of Live, Love, and Marry Wiser. We're so happy to have you here. You know, the Bible says wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and in all you're getting, get understanding. And so we really pray, we plan, and we prepare for you to access wisdom for your life and relationships through all of the hosts and the awesome guests that join us weekly. And we have some awesome guests that are here today. I'm excited about it. And I am excited to have two of my co-hosts, Renee and Ebony. How are you all doing?
Hello. Doing well.
Good. Glad to have you here. Ebony's been under the weather for a couple of weeks or so,
Yes.
So we are happy to have her here. Now, you might notice that Onita is missing, and here's why. She's probably going to be in the comments, but Onita is one of the couples that we are going to be having on the program, and so her husband is here tonight, so she was banned from being a host. So, hey, Onita, wherever you are, we love you, and we look forward to seeing you with us next week as not a host, but as a wife. So, we are going to start with, we're going to do all of our housekeeping things and get those out of the way, because I want us to be able to focus on just the conversation. It's going to be longer today. We're just going to put that out front. You can always watch it late, finish watching it if you can, it's on YouTube. And so we want you to be sharing. We want you to get your friends over here to watch. We want you to be in the comments. Please.
Yes.
We want you to ask questions. Your question might get answered. We also want you to hit that like button, thumbs up button, subscribe. We're trying to grow the channel. We know people are watching. We've been hearing some good feedback on the content, and we want you to share that because we want people's lives to be impacted.
Yes.
As you all know, we have a book coming out this month, and so let's start with that. In a world filled with challenges, one book empowers women to become warriors of prayer. Pray It Forward for women who choose to fight on their knees. Dive into the transformative journey of prayer, fasting, and praise. Join a sisterhood of prayer warriors and discover the power that comes. That's fascinating. Okay, well, we're gonna end that right there. When you fight on your knees. So this never happened. I have a great connection, so I'm not sure, but hey, we have our book launch coming. We don't have a date yet, but we are supposed to get it back from the editor hopefully in the next few days, and then we can proceed with the next part of the process. But I'm very excited, and I hope that you all will, if you're women, that you'll get the book. If you're men, that you will encourage your wives to get the book, because they'll be praying for you probably. It's a book for women praying for the men in their lives, like interceding, fasting, specific things. And we are excited to have women's ministries grab this book. And I will tell you more about how we're going to launch that in January, but it's going to be available to purchase before that. So I'm excited about that. And I thank you for my hosts who are already supporting and being like, hey, I need this many, I need this many, I need this many. So thank you all for that. And so now I'm going, what time is it? Renee, what time is it?
It's time for the lowdown on the update.
For those of you who have not been watching, I have decided to be on an intentional dating, intentionally dating. I haven't done that for 5 years. And even before that, I wasn't really doing it. But now I've decided that I'm ready. And so I've been online, and I'll be doing other things, but I've been online. Last week, I said I was going to read my profile, but then I couldn't find it. So I don't know what happened there, because when I went back this week, it was exactly in the place where I was looking last week. So I was like, well, maybe God didn't want me to read it then. Maybe I'm going to just read it now. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. There are no updates as far as there are a couple of guys who've fallen off the radar. I don't know if I've been ghosted. That doesn't matter to me. But for some reason that conversation has ceased. There's another guy who just messaged me like yesterday. So I'm giving some prayer and consideration to that. But here's my profile. To my husband, I have been praying for you off and on for my whole adult life, but now more consistently. I've trusted God for the time you would find me. I have imagined us bringing the Sabbath in together on Friday evening, worshiping on Sabbath, hosting lunch after church, and even doing work days together. My faith defines me, and I want to be with someone who we can start with the same foundational beliefs to build on. Although I wanted to meet you at 23, I wasn't ready, and maybe you weren't either. God knew that his plan for me meant that I needed to be single during this part of my life. I believe that time is coming to an end. I heard a marriage coach say that you know you're ready to marry when you are overflowing with love you want to give your future spouse, rather than thinking about what they will do for you. The day before that, I had told my best friend that I was built to build, and I wanted someone to pour into and help him build. I want to partner with you for God's purpose for you, me, and us. Although I have always been helpful to others, I have saved the best of me for you. There are parts of my heart that no one has accessed that will be just for you. There are secrets no one knows that I look forward to sharing with you. I want to laugh, cry, cook, travel, serve, relax, sleep, and everything in between with you forever. I can't wait to see what God has planned for us. I pray now for you and will always pray for you. I am not perfect, but I'm preparing to be perfect for you. Your wife for life, me.
Okay, sis. Very intentional. Very intentional.
Yeah, that is the exact word that came to mind for me. Very intentional. And you spoke to what it is exactly you want. You spoke to your purpose. You spoke to, how you intend to, or you desire to live your life and all that. So it's so awesome that you put it out there like that, because right off the bat, he can already make that determination to see if he feels like that's a good match. I love it. That was really sweet.
Yeah. I agree. And I think also that there is the perception that when a woman is established or older, that she's like, I want a man, I don't need a man, but there was so much heart and aspiration in what you shared. I love that. I felt like that would be very connecting.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate that. I of course, was a little bit, nervous about putting that out in the streets. And I was just like, well, hey, he might be watching the show, or his sister might be watching, or his mama, or whatever. So, I think that that's part of this process, is to help women who are like me, whether they're young or old, to stop being embarrassed or feel ashamed of wanting to have a partner in life. It doesn't matter how old you are, that if that's a desire in your heart, then prepare for it and do what's necessary to be able to find that, or be found by him. I think that, so I'm going to say this really quick. I'm actually going out to an event this week. That's going to be my first outing. I'm going by myself. I don't know anyone. I knew one person, but she said she don't think she's going to be there. It's a 1920s style It's a business awards dinner, but they're doing the 1920s. So I got my flapper dress coming in the mail tomorrow and my whole situation. And I'm just doing it. I am just doing it. I'm putting myself out into the world. So I'm excited about that, just to have fun, but also, you can't meet anybody if you're not out in the world. So that's
I love that.
I've done the online thing and I'm doing that, but I want to do the real life thing too, the in person stuff.
Sounds like living wiser to me.
Oh,
yes.
nice.
Yes.
So that was the lowdown on the updates.
Love it.
Let's see. Okay. Now look at this. Who might this person be?
Sounds like a brother to me.
It sounds like a brother.
It sounds like our other host.
Yeah, he said, but that's true. They will weed themselves
100%.
out. That's what I want. I don't got time because I am not young. I ain't got time to be dealing with all that other stuff. Okay, so the final thing before we bring on our guest is we have a new segment on the program. It's actually off the program. It's called After Wise, and quite frankly, I love that name. I did come up with it, but I felt like the Holy Spirit gave it to me because it was like, as soon as I said, hey, ladies, we need a name for this, immediately after that, I text them, Afterwise, and they were like, yes. So after we get off all of these calls, especially with our guests, but even when it's just us, we always have like a fantastic conversation that comes after that we never capture and that you never get to hear. So now we have started recording that, and our guests will come and we'll record that, we'll edit it, and we'll put that out like during our break or some other days we'll start doing that. But what we are going to also start doing, which I'm super excited about, is that we are going to allow a number of our viewers, if they want to join us backstage on the recording, there is a link that is in the comments right now. And when it's time when we end, if you want to come in, click on the link and you can come and be a part of that conversation. Because I hear a lot of you are having conversations after we go. Now you can have them with us. So I'm super excited about this idea we just came up with yesterday. Now there's a limit, so you want to get in quickly, because right now we'll have 6 people on. So that means we can only allow, and the wives, Sandra and Raquel, Onita, you can join as well, but we only have 4 spaces after that. So you got to get in quick. And so we would love to have some of our viewers to come and join and give their input in person, sort of. Okay, now we're done with all of those. And now we are ready. We have our final series, 3 parts, To Have and to Hold. Tonight, we're talking about what do men want. We have 3 married men who are going to come in and share. Next week, we're going to have the wives, and then a special Friday evening on the 15th, where we're going to go as long as we go. We're going to talk to couples together. So right now, let's bring on our guest. We have Victor, we have Tommy, and we have somebody with feedback. Do I have the right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yay!
Technology all the time. All right, sweet. Okay, so I'm going to just start with Tommy. I'm just ask you to just give us a short introduction of yourself, who you're married to, and just kind of like the context of your marriage, like the dynamics of your marriage. And even from the beginning, it doesn't have to be now, because we're going to use that to frame, your answers and understand you a little bit more. And then we'll go to Ben and then Victor.
All right. Good evening, ladies. How are you?
Good. How are
Good,
you?
good. My name is Tommy Daniels. Been married to Sandra Daniels, going on 36 years now.
Woo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're still happy. We're still happy, and we still love each other. So that's good.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, I met Sandra at there was an outdoor concert, and I met her while I saw her, and then I kind of posted up behind her where I make sure I could get to her when everything was as things were going on, and she happened to walk by me, and we kind of looked at one another and kind of nodded, and she went over to the concession stand, and I waited for her to come back, and it's crazy because when she came back, a guy stopped her midway back and tried to talk to her, and she said, "I'm with him," and pointed at me. Yes. And she has been ever since. How about that?
I love my good sister.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness, I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah. When we met, now I had been married before. It wasn't. We were unevenly yoked. How about that? We were married for a year, and no, we were married for 10 years together. One, and so I was pretty much a single guy. We just hadn't done the final papers and things, right? But I had gotten divorced before I met Sandra, of course. And I kind of had already vowed that I wasn't going to get married again. Partially, I wasn't the right guy. And yeah, I hadn't matured enough to be in that kind of relationship. I don't think I was right out of the military. I was still wild. I was still in my own head, you know? But when I met Sandra and we went out, the first date we went on, when the date was over, I was taking her to her home, and I told her then, I said, you know, months later, we were married. Yeah.
How many
She
months?
was, huh?
How many months later?
3.
What?
Yeah, it didn't take long. It's funny because I kind of knew when I met her and we had our first date and we talked, and she was just that person, you know. She was first of all, she was everything that I wasn't right at that point. Grounded. She was God-fearing woman, and I was not. Okay, I had been churched, but I wasn't that guy. But tell her, I say, I saw my mother in you, and not from but I saw some traits that she had in her that I knew was necessary to help me stay around, and to be life with. And I knew it early, and I wasn't wrong. We have been, together, and we're growing and we changing as the years go by. But you kind of roll with those changes. You grow together. Everything kind of works together as time goes on. Just because that's the plan. That's what we want to do. The kids are grown and gone, and there's other than the fact that we want to be together. We're not. It's not like an obligation. It's just what we want to do. I want to go down the road so the rest of our lives. She's a little younger than I am. She's 7 years younger than I am, and I always joke with her about I needed somebody to push my wheelchair around. But that's not. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. I just, I love her, and I tell her all the time. 6 months after I retired from the post office, I had a quadruple bypass surgery, and she was there for me and had been by my side before then and after that, and. I tell her all the time, because of the things that I was into early on, that God put you in my life because I don't think I'd be alive if it wasn't for you.
Man.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love
that
it.
had me crying already. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but
It's gonna be that kind of night.
that
Yeah.
kind of night. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank
So,
you.
yep.
Thank you. That's great. So now you all understand the context when he answers the questions. All right, Ben, what you got?
All right, hello everybody.
Hey, hey, Ben.
My name is Ben Curette, and I have been married to Raquel for 5.5 years now. We got married in the summer, and so our the way we met. I was in high school, so was she, and I met her because I had just broken up with like my high school girlfriend, and with that kind of stuff, I lost I lost all my friends in the breakup. You know what I mean? Like they all went with her because they were all like, they were friends from like her church. Like I started going there for her, and so they've known her for years. So like it wasn't anyway. A friend from school was like, dude, well now you have nothing to do on Sabbath. You should come with me. We do these skits, church skits, and so it was an after church thing, and it was at a Brazilian church. He was Cuban, so I was like, "What are you even doing there?" But God works in mysterious ways, and I met Raquel there, and we have this one skit that was just for Raquel and I that the person put together, and it was all about giving your heart to Jesus above all things. And so in that skit, I was actually like this rude guy, like, and I led her on. I took her heart and I like threw it on the ground. It was like a pantomime kind of things, right?
Huh?
And like we still have a video of that, of just Raquel and I doing those little skits. It's just ironic now, but we were just friends for about 4 years until we were then both in college, and we started, every time I'd come home, we'd visit and stuff like that. But again, like my mind was not there until like really Raquel and I spent more intentional time. We would ask, questions of the night, and I started to realize, man, Raquel is really cool. Why didn't I know this all that, all that time ago? But kind of like what Tommy said, like 4 years before that, I wasn't ready, and well, I guess Tommy, you was 3, so I guess I don't feel so bad, but like I felt self-conscious about it because people like, no, like you barely know them. I was like, no, I've known her for like 5 years at this point. I've met her family before. Like there were things that we already knew about each other. So it kind of felt fast for us. But 11 months in, I proposed, and then we were engaged for about 8 months. And another thing, we were all long distance that whole time, dating and the engagement.
Wow.
The first time that we saw each other every day was when we got married. And yeah, so that was, and then we moved up to Michigan for the seminary, and that was like a whole other, so we went through a lot. Like Raquel and I feel like we've been through the fire, and we're forged, you know what I mean? But we're every year gets better, so we're loving that.
That's awesome.
Love that.
That's awesome. For those of you who don't know, we actually did an interview with Ben and Raquel in the first season, and I'm gonna link it up there so you can watch it the next time. All right, Victor, you're up, my friend.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Great. So as my title says there, I'm Onita's husband. we got Onita and I. We met in 1997. So I guess I was a late bloomer because we dated for 3 years. We got married January 1st of 2000. So we're coming almost on, a few weeks from now, we'll be married 24 years. We have 4 beautiful children that God has blessed us with. We have a freshman in college, Taylor, who's 18, Avery, Sydney, 13 and 12, and then BJ came, and he's almost 5. So we have a beautiful family. Onita and I met, as my kids tease me, Onita and I met back in the 1900s. So we actually, for those who live in Richmond, remember Regency Mall.
Oh, wow.
we both worked at Sears at Regency Mall. So
Right.
I was the kind of a do-it-all. I worked in many areas. I was fresh from New York, so they stuck me in package pickup first to make sure I didn't, be rude to customers or anything like that. And I worked my way up to the sales floor. Onita was in fine jewelry. So if you ever walked past that second floor to go into the food court into the mall, you probably passed by. So we established a friendship. We both liked wrestling back then, so we used to talk about wrestling. And a friend of mine was a friend of Onita's, so he kind of introduced us. At the time, Onita had a boyfriend, and I know you guys have heard that story. So my details, the way she describes it, and the way I describe it is a little different.
That's
I'll
usually
save that. I'll save that for Friday night when we're together. But we agreed to go on our first date, and the first night we talked for about 4 hours. And at that time I was 21, she was 18. We really talked about future. So we both agreed we did not want to waste time. We both talked about things we wanted to accomplish in life. We wanted to have kids. We wanted to have a house. We wanted to, finish our education. And I had never been to church a day in my life. So Nita was big on talking about church and how important it is, and how important Jesus was to her. So she really introduced me to church. So we go on our first date, and this is how we knew we were supposed to be together. We went to a park and we sat on the swings, and Onita goes, "Hey, can we pray?" And it was kind of awkward because I didn't say a prayer to yourself, but not necessarily say it out loud. So she prayed, and what she asked for was, God, we've talked about how we want to live our lives. If we're not the right people for each other, please show us a sign. So we both believed that we walked past the building to get to the park that was condemned and boarded up. As we're walking back to our house, a person comes out of the boarded up building, and he goes, young man, come here for a second." So we turn around and not kind of nervous because we're like, where did that person come from? Because that building was boarded up. And he just says to me, do right by her, keep her holy. And then she goes, young lady, make sure he stays on the straight and narrow and you keep him holy. So we both walked silently back to our house saying, we just got our answer. That was our first date. So, we decided that, yep, this was our answer. We're going to continue on. And, 26 years later, we're still together. So I look forward to this excitement, this experience. And thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yes. I love all of those stories. I love those stories. There's such a and that's why we wanted you to talk about it, because it's such a unique quality to everything, all of your situations. So I think my first question is, what if you can say 3 things that you think that men want in relationships or marriage? I just want to start there, because that's going to help answer the question that we actually put on here. When we are, I'm listening to a lot of different things that are not necessarily with a Christian foundation. Some are, some aren't. And there's still some running themes. And I want to know from you, I want to ask men, what is it that men really want from a relationship or marriage specifically? I'll start with Ben.
Well, I don't know if I can speak for all men.
Well, we can figure that. But
yeah. And to be honest, I don't even know what people. Yeah, I don't know what people want anymore. It seems interesting. When I was pastoring, just listening to like the college students, I was like, yo, I need to go back to school just to have this conversation. But for me, I knew that the first thing I spoke about this when Raquel and I were on before. Like for me, the number one thing I was looking for, like in a spouse, was somebody that I could walk through conflict with, and not just our own conflict, but conflict in life. And like I said, like I like hinted at, like the last 5.5 years, like Raquel and I have been all over the place. Like not just our relationship, but around. Like I said, when I was pastoring, that's like a big hint. Like so much has happened within 5 years, and I would not have lasted as long if it wasn't for Raquel. Raquel's been there the whole time. So, kind of leading into the second one, Raquel has been somebody I needed somebody who was supportive, and she has been very supportive. Like part of, like I'm in flight school now. That was her saying like, listen, go do what you need to do, and like I got this. Um, and one of the things she's doing right now, like she's basically our whole marriage. I've been the one who's working, uh, but she's like, listen, you go to school, I got this, and like she has a job, and I just love how supportive she is. And then I even think I saw it somewhere in the chat. I don't know if that was for me, but definitely peace. Life is hard enough. Yeah, there it comes again. Yeah, I see it right there. Life is hard enough. You know what I mean? You're fighting a fight every day in the real world. I want to come home and have peace, and Raquel is that for me. So.
All right,
Lovely.
Victor, I'm gonna go to you.
Yeah, so the first thing I thought of when I got the question was a genuine relationship. Unfiltered, no airs about it. Just truly, I want to be who I am. I want my spouse to be who she is, and we grow together. So that was kind of the foundation of our Nita and I's conversation when we first started. I think being heard. So, I think peace is obviously a great one, but to kind of take it down another level. So, I work in corporate America, and in some situations, you're not heard. So when you go home, you want a peaceful environment where you actually can be heard. You want to actually tell your spouse, hey, this happened today. Not necessarily to say, well, what did you think about this? Or let me fix it for you. It's really like it's the opposite. They always say guys just try to fix a situation and move on, and what ladies hate that. Well, we hate it too. So I think that is, and then lastly, the opportunity to enjoy life. I think if you are with your partner and you decide what enjoyment is, you work towards that. No matter what anybody else's definition of enjoyment is, you work to enjoy enjoyment. So the communication piece of that is so big, because a lot of people kind of try to keep up with the Joneses, and you don't know what the Joneses are doing. So focus on what you can do with your spouse, and live to that goal, versus not articulating a goal and then working towards nothing. Because if you don't have a plan, you're really working and wasting your time.
Wow, I love that
Yes.
so much. Tommy,
That.
that's
Well, these gentlemen had hit on most of the actual answers, really. You look for someone that loves you. I mean, unconditionally. All of the good and the bad. They're in your corner. They make sure that you're good on a regular basis. They take care of. Well, we do things together as far as our home is concerned, but it's something like, a woman's touch in a home is something special. It is. And that peace thing, you want to come home after you fought the whole world. You want to be home and be comfortable in your home. You don't want to have to fight when you get there. You know what I mean? This is kind of your place of refuge. When the world beats you up, you can come home. You got somebody smiling and waiting. My wife comes to the top of the steps sometimes and be like, "Who's home? You are." And I was like, "After all these years, she's still, I love it. I love it." And then to have a real spiritual background as far as our lives go. We are. I am, and she is. We're together with this thing now. Not that we weren't, but to actually see somebody walk it out like she does. She's never been wavering. She's never wavered in her belief. As crazy and stupid as I had gotten in the very beginning of our relationship, she hung in there. She said God hadn't told her to leave, and so I'm thankful that she went through that with me. I didn't mean to put her through that, and I apologize all the time. But yeah, those are the things that you like to see in your marriage. It keeps you grounded, and the rest of the world can kind of take a back seat. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I think also, I mean, I appreciate there's a theme,
There is.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not, I can't speak for, I don't have a lot of relationship with men of, I mean, I'm a white man. I'm like, how can I say this politically correct? I mean, that's my whole profession. But anyway, but I think it's especially challenging for our men of color. Like the world is after y'all in a way that is from what I hear is draining to say the least, and is frightening at the worst. So I appreciate um the honesty and the transparency around, like, I need my home to be peace. Like that's a valid point. It's an important point on a different level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's so interesting is that, Ben said, I don't think I could speak for all men. And yet he spoke for all men, because, other people added some stuff, but they only added it because you said the stuff we're already thinking. And every conversation that I listen to online, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's with mostly men, and it's peace is always in there, like it's always in there. But I was listening to one yesterday, and he said that what men want is trust. He said lust at first, and then he said love and devotion. And and from a wife, I mean, they have a different context, so they don't necessarily are not as they don't necessarily hold to the same moral standards that we do as far as sex in marriage and not out of marriage. That's not judging that, but the thing. And he said that trust, and the way he framed the trust is that men want their wives, or the woman that they're with, to trust them enough to take guidance, instruction, and leadership from them. I want you, and I'm framing this around the context of that question, but also just that idea of submission and headship. I want to talk about what you think about that. I'm going to start with Tommy.
We've established over time and different challenges. I'm the priest of our home. It's my responsibility to make sure things go in that direction. And honestly, I hadn't always been that guy, but that's what we do. That's what I do. And I need, I don't know. Yeah, I'm the priest of the home. And oh boy. See, I just had a senior moment, y'all. Help me out. Help me out.
That's okay. You've been married 36 years almost, so you get to have those.
Yeah. I'm the priest of the home, but as far as we're different people, we are, and we have different ways of doing things, but at the same time they work together, and we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we work off of those things. I don't need somebody that's submissive and just listens to everything that I want somebody that has an opinion. That means a lot to me, that they can talk to me and we can converse about a lot of things. And a lot of times you're right and I'm not, and you have to be able to be open to collect those things. Otherwise, it's not a mutual type thing, So I'm grateful and thankful that look, it's been 36 years and it took me a while to actually learn and grasp that. But I'm getting there. So yeah, I'm thankful. Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah, so this is a good one. I grew up in a household where I didn't have a male presence, and going back to Onita's conversation about, we wanted to break those chains. We wanted to things that happen in our in our families growing up, we wanted to avoid. So Onita and I both being the oldest of our families, and we feel that we get them all the time, the answers right. So it took a while. Like, we had marriage counseling before we got married, and that was a topic that was talked about. But I think Onita and I really have evolved from 20s, 30s, 40s to basically, where are the gaps? So what does Onita do very strong? Okay, you take care of that. What do I do very strong? But one thing that I came into the marriage saying I wanted to do, I wanted to be the provider. I wanted my household to be taken care of. Early on in our marriage, 6 months into our marriage, we had 3 kids that moved in with us, 2 of Onita's sisters and my brother. And at the time, like I said, I was 24, Onita was 21. We had 2 13-year-olds and 11-year-olds. So it was definitely an adjustment. To this day, we still have great relationships. Those kids are now full adults. 2 of them are 37. One of them, I think, is 35. So they're leading their lives. But they still give us the respect from that situation. And it was really training ground because then we were blessed. It's so funny how God works out. The youngest one that we had turned 18, and then Taylor came. So it was like, hey, that one is moving out the way. So now I'm gonna start you guys off. And you have some practice, so make the best of it. So I don't ever think I've looked at Onita looked at me as like, you're not submitting or you're not respecting. Those have always been things that have been cornerstones for us, and we just have taken it day by day all along. But like, I may get up there and try to cook something, and the kids laugh at me and they be like, Mom makes it this way. So I stay in my lane. I'm really good at taking out the trash. So we never have a problem with that. But I think when you talk about a genuine partnership, you don't sit around waiting saying you're supposed to do that or you're supposed to do this. I think you just fill the gap, and then if the person wants you to start doing it, then you work together and say, hey, can you show me how to do that? Because I really want to do it. I just don't know how to do it as well as you do it. So that's kind of been our approach over these 24 years.
Oh, love that.
I love that. I love that. All right, Ben, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm with agreement with everybody. I see myself, priest of the home, spiritually. Spiritually, I really feel like it is my responsibility to kind of hold that down. When it comes to like our roles, maybe stepping outside, and I think everything is spiritual, but just for the conversation's sake, stepping out of the spiritual, just like the practical roles. Raquel and I talked when we were dating. It was one of the things we talked about, that just about respect. I see it a lot, and I've counseled adults who are twice my age, and they're saying like, it's not that I'm trying to like, fight with my wife or fight with my husband, but they're like, when they respond to me, it's just so disrespectful, and so we talked a lot about respect and kind of how that works. But there were times just practically where like, we'd have something we needed to discuss, and Raquel and I would come together, and she would respect. One of my favorite Raquel stories ever, like just one of these moments where just kind of just down in the pits, if you will, of pastoral ministry, just like absolutely, utterly stressed out of my mind, like had a panic attack that Sabbath morning, had to go preach anyway, came back absolutely like just destroyed. And Raquel had been leading up to that saying, you need to take a break. We need to, vacation. I'm like, the finances aren't in order. We can't go on vacation. Like if I leave, it's going to be a mess, and I don't want to have to come back and fix that. So I kept saying no, no, no. And she kept respecting that until that day where she recognized he is not in the right headspace to say no again. And we came home after the church that Sabbath, and I just looked a mess. And Raquel said again, we need to go on a vacation. We need to take time away. And I started to do that thing again, like, no, Raquel, we're not. And she just walked away from me. She got a mirror. She got a handheld mirror. She came back and put it in front of me. And she said, look at yourself.
Wow.
He's like, look at yourself right now. And I did. I was like, oh, I look like a corpse. You know what I mean? Like I was not looking good. And in that moment, humility had to kick in for me to recognize, like, she's not being argumentative, right? Like she's recognizing, like, we have to give and take in moments where I'm not in a right headspace to kind of like call the shots right now, and she needs to step in, and I need to then, where she's been submitting before, like, no, okay, fine, we won't go. I need to submit, and we did. We threw that joint on the credit card, and we went on a cruise, and it was the best thing that we could have ever done in that moment. So it was a give and take. There's moments where we got to submit too. You know what I mean? Like she might see something that we don't see because we're so focused on something, and I'm glad that the Holy Spirit spoke to me and told me to just shut up and go on the cruise.
She created peace for you, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she was doing. She was creating peace for you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So talking about respect, because that's a really big thing that I hear about, and we know about respect. Women need love, men need respect. What can a woman do to you, and that probably will resonate with other men, to disrespect you or emasculate you? Or it might not be your wife, it may have been another woman. Like because I think that a lot of women just do stuff off the cuff. They say stuff off the cuff, they whatever, and they don't realize what they're doing. I'm actually listening to, and we're going to put these resources in the description. I'm listening to a book right now called For Women Only. It's about men. And 8 things that you need to know about your man. And respect is probably like number 1. So talk about that for me. I'll start with Victor this time.
So Onita and I always say there's nobody that can get she and I off our kilter like she and I. So for me, the communication is always big. So if Onita had a problem, or if I had a problem and I confided in someone else before I confided in him, that would be disrespectful in my case. Now, I think in conversations we've had in the past, it's like, hey, I wouldn't necessarily get my story together before, because kind of like Ben said, it's all over my face. So you can tell what mood Victor's in by the face that he's making. So if Victor's face is all scrunched up, I probably don't want to tell him that he's lacking in this area right now. So I'm talking to somebody, right? But you got to really know who you're talking to. There's going to be some friends that you can talk to that really have your best interest at heart, and they'll give you feedback and they won't share. But there's going to be some friends that may go back and be like, yeah, Onita was talking about you, and she said this and this. So I think that not communicating directly is something that is a big disrespect. I think some of the some people call it fighting unfair. So let's say I didn't pay a bill. It's like, hey, you've been talking about your whole life, you wanted to take care of us, and you couldn't even pay that bill. I think when you talk about emasculating, that would be an example of that. Something that's core to me that I didn't, from a standpoint of, if I wasn't able to provide, that would be killing me inside. So I don't necessarily need to hear that on the outside from the person that says they love me. I said, so I think that would be an example of, the disrespect, and also, attacking me on the masculine side.
Wow, that's so.
Yeah.
Before we because literally, when I was listening to the book yesterday, that's almost the exact example that she gave. She gave other examples, but that was one of them, because she's like, all men, no matter how much money they made or didn't make, they believed that they needed to be the provider and the protector. And the pressure that they feel, she said, like, it was like 70-something% of men said they think about that all the time. It's in the back of their mind. And there was, a wide range of socioeconomic status. And she gave an example that was almost exactly like, I already feel what I'm feeling about that, not doing this. For you to bring it up and throw it in my face is so. Women, if you're listening, stop doing that. Stop
And
it. This
and
program
just
is
just
not just about entertaining or sharing and getting these great stories. We want to get to the nitty gritty. We want to understand how to do things better, how to do things differently. And for those of us who are not married, how to avoid those landmines before you even get into that relationship.
Yeah, Lorraine, I just wanted to say one more thing, Lorraine. So,
Yeah.
Ebony pointed out the race piece of it.
Mhm.
So, when we're on our jobs, I know, for example, me, I have 5 or 6 jobs compared to my counterparts who have one that
Yes.
struggles with it.
Yes.
And what we didn't touch on, because I know all 3 of us are, we haven't yet talked about the service we do at church. That's a whole nother beast. So, I think we'll probably work that in somewhere, but you don't want to necessarily be told, hey, you should do more for the Lord. And then when you start doing it, that's a challenge in the relationship. I've seen that before. I've had it before. It started off where I was like, Onita, you're at church every day, right? Because I was at home, like, when is she coming home? But then once I got involved with treasury and all that stuff, then I'm at church every day. And she's like, well, when are you coming home? So, you got to find that balance in this, because, what I've always been told is your home is your first ministry. So you can't be, being a Superman at church and then being Clark Kent at home.
Right.
Hey, say that.
Right. What's up, Ben?
Yeah, for me, like the thing that will begin to set me off, I think, is like just passive aggressiveness. So like, and a lot of these things kind of like,
Yeah, that gets ugly.
it kind of like tees off from that, so just, I'm trying to think of like an example because, I've been living with peace at home for so long, I'm starting to forget what the struggle was like.
Nice.
Okay.
Amen. Yeah.
Raquel, we love that.
Yeah, no, she's great. But like I'm just trying to think. Like, I just wish somebody would, if only somebody would, make the bed around here, like, stuff like it's like I'm right here. I know you're talking about me. Like, that's that will get me. And then something that basically Victor just said it is something that we struggled with when we first started, because being up in, we got married, like I said, and like a few weeks later we moved up to seminary, and I was on that stipend, and I had to get another job, and snow tires, like this everything, and so I would work a lot, and I would really, and this might have just been a communication thing. Like, I was here grinding, like trying to pick up shifts and work, and then there was a thing with like Raquel. I remember one thing that we talked about was like Raquel was like, I just feel like you'd rather go to work than be home with me. It was like, but I'm doing it for you. Like, I don't want to go to work. Like, I'm doing it so that we can go out to eat and whatever. But then, there was truth. Like, how are we going to go out to eat if you're working? So, that was just a struggle balance, trying to figure that out. But that was something that I felt in that moment. We talked about it and we good now. But like, I just felt so defeated. I was like, I don't know what to do. If I work, then I'm wrong. But if I don't work, then I'm wrong. So it was a hard place to be. Yeah.
I'm telling y'all, get that book for women only. There's one for the men too, for men only. But ladies, that exact example was in the book as well. And there's a struggle. So wow.
That's a great point, Ben. I'm sorry, look ahead.
No, I want you to go.
That's a great point, because I mean, to full transparency, that has been a struggle for me. And my husband and I, we've been married for 25 years, and my husband is the original hustler. Period. He gonna work and he gonna breathe. If he don't do anything else, he gonna work and he gonna breathe. And I'm like, I struggle with that, and I don't think it's probably like today years old, hearing Ben and hearing y'all's point of view, that I realized that internal struggle that he is having. Cause I'm like, we want time. I want you home. And, but he's like, I gotta that his provision is his first priority. You know, that's where his head goes. It's like, we can't do anything else if I'm not providing, you know. And I'm just like, you know, but we need that other piece of it. So that balance, Ben, that you spoke of, that is helpful. That struggle is helpful for us to understand, for me to understand.
Yeah, and it's still something that we're still navigating because like the church was all consuming, and then I'm trying to get into aviation, which is also pretty all consuming, and that's so when Raquel and I were navigating this, one of the things we go on walks and we talk, and we'll be out for like an hour, 2 hours just talking, and like that was one of the concerns. She was like, "Listen, I don't want you to leave one thing that kept you, and then you try to just grind it out in aviation, and I never see you still." So that's something that prayerfully, like, I know that I need to navigate is like, where is the balance from trying to pay off these loans, but also be home, and, when I'm home, I have to be home, so stuff like that. We're still figuring it out. Like I said, we're only 5.5 years in, so we're figuring it out.
It's no only 5.5 is 5.5. So yeah.
Right. I just read a statistic that said the average marriage lasts 7 years. And now a lot of the statistics that we've heard around marriage, 50% and all that, those are actually not true. In fact, the same woman who wrote the book For Women Only and For Men Only wrote a book called The Good News About Marriage, where she says those numbers are actually essentially made up. Like we've been saying that for years, but it's really not 50%. It's more like 33%. And in the Christian, we've always heard Christian marriages are the same. And she's like, no, there's like 17%. So we still don't want divorce, but the numbers that we've been hearing all these years are really just inaccurate, and they're essentially made up. Renee had a good question we talked about earlier. So I want to defer to her right now as we can keep, because I got some good ones coming up.
I had a few questions for you guys, and I really have been enjoying all the information that you guys have shared with us thus far. You guys talked about respect and communication. And one of the questions that I had was, how do you guys manage conflicting communication styles? So, you guys have spent some time, kind of working on that over the years. So can you give us an insight on what it used to be like versus is now, assuming that you guys are doing better?
We'll start with Tommy.
All right.
Okay. Our communication style has really evolved as we've grown together and lived together for a long time. We understand each other's communications. She's the type of person that likes to get things over and done with. When something or conflict comes up, then we need to talk about it. We need to resolve this right away. I've learned to be, or I've always been, let me lay back and digest this before we go back and talk about it, because in the past, when things come up and we get to that place and meet an impasse, then I'll say the wrong thing. You can't, people forgive, but they never forget. And that thing in the scripture says that, the tongue is a mighty weapon, and so you have to remember. That's why I take my time. I think about what it is we talked about and what it is I had to say, so that we can have a really educated conversation about it, and it doesn't get to that place where we're not talking to each other right now because you said something that hurt my feelings, and I never want to do that. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Victor?
Yeah, so this is a struggle. So I grew up in a household of silent treatment. Oneida grew up in a household where they talked it out, fought it out, and it got resolved that day. So early on in our marriage, that's how it went. Just like Tommy said, I would purposely not talk to avoid saying something I would regret. Actually, Oneida would be more upset that I'm not talking versus what potentially could have come out of my mouth. Now, how it has evolved, right? Yeah, I don't have time for no silent treatment. And what I've done is I've created another woman. So I have Onita, my friend, and I have Onita, my wife. I look at them as two different people, and Onita has adjusted where she can have this friend. Hey, Onita, my friend, this is what I'm pissed about. And she will then take it because she's so mature and she's so great, and she talks to me like a friend. Then my silent treatments, I could go a week sometimes back in the day not talking, and she's like, "You gonna talk today?" Like, when we have arguments now, it's like, hey, 10 minutes later, I'm apologizing. I know what I did wrong. It was in the heat of the moment. And I think that drew us closer together, where she's like, okay, he's not going to sit there and try to figure it all out and come to me with a whole game plan of what happened, what was the breakdown. It's like, okay, okay, hey, this is what it was. I apologize for that. And what Onita says, which is great, what is your next action? What did you learn from this situation so that we don't have this in the future? Because if we continue to have it in the future, the apology really doesn't mean anything. So that, I think, as Tommy said, this will evolve into, until I'm not here anymore. But at least we're not stuck where we were 20 years ago. We have made improvements to our overall communication.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. We lost. Hold on, we got him back. Okay. Ben?
Yeah, I was the one who, read that verse, never let the sun go down in your anger. And I took that to heart. I was like, Raquel, wake up. We're not done, And she was the one who was like, I need some time, And, I perceived that as like, oh, she's trying to brush it under the rug. And all she was trying to do was think through her thoughts. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily how to, not so much to elaborate on that, but we just are more conscious of that now that we know how we talk. Now we both know how we want to talk through things. We try to meet each other in the middle. She's like, I'm not gonna take 2 days. Maybe I'll take 12 hours or something. Just let me think, and I try to back off. If I realize I'm coming in too hot, I'm like, oh, hold on. This is like we'll talk about it.
Hey, one more thing. In addition to Onita, I started to realize I have 3 daughters watching me, which is going to be training on the guys that they meet. So, so that was another reason why I felt like I had to change, because I know if I went to my daughter's house and her husband was walking around not talking, I'd be like, what's wrong with this fool? So, but that could have been what they saw dad do. So they was like, well, dad, you did it. And, I let him, like mom used to let you blow off steam, I let him blow off steam. So, obviously, even a situation when they're young, you don't know what they take from that situation. Right. You could be doing, in your mind, you could be doing it so much better as they got older, but they still may say, because there's no one that's going to tell you the truth like your kids. They say, well, Dad, you were always like that when I was growing up. So that was another reason why I started to adjust, because I'm like, I gotta be, because I've read books where they talk about the father is their first love, their first attraction. So that also hit me, because I'm like, well, this is an Onita and I thing, but it's not. It's everybody in the house is impacted by the situation, and nobody takes it the same. So all 3 daughters will look at that situation and come with 3 different experiences about how that situation went.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Vic, that's a whole 2-3 episodes in capsule. So I want to draw 2 things together, so that submission and headship and the communication. Do you feel, and this is kind of a general question, but kind of drawn off of some of the things that Vic has said, like, do you feel that it is the husband's responsibility to lead in the reconciliation? So y'all have an argument, speaking or not speaking or whatever. Is it one person's responsibility over the other, particularly the husband, to start that process of reconciliation?
Yes, and it's because I was taught early on that husband, you are the band around the family. So you reconcile and you make sure the family's straight. So yes, that's how I feel.
Victor, when your book coming out?
Exactly.
I'm speaking that thing into existence. When
Yeah.
that coming out?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I love that.
The other men are like, yeah, I guess that's true. So we're gonna go with that answer. Y'all, did you have Ben or Tommy? You have anything? That's a good question and a great answer.
Well, yeah. Even though, like I said earlier, I take take my time and don't answer right away, but it has to be resolved, and sometimes she won't say anything about it, and I've been thinking about it, so I go to her and we talk, and we got to get it resolved, and we have to find some peace. So and that's not always, that hasn't always been the case. Like I said, with time we've learned to adjust and do things differently, because I could go a couple days without saying anything and she would say something about it, but I understand better now that it is my responsibility to at least initiate that conversation, because sometimes I don't even like what's coming out, what I hear, when we go back and revisit it. But yeah, let me make sure that my house and my family and my wife we're on the same page, and she's comfortable with, I don't ever want to hurt her, have her feel like she's not understood. We have to kind of work together to get things done. So yeah, I will be the first to try to resolve things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I feel like if I'm the one who was wrong, I need to make that first step, right? And if Raquel was the one who was wrong, like, she needs to, make that first step. But I think, I guess, in terms of headship, and maybe it's just the way that my brain works, how I feel like my role in our marriage is like, what we're not going to do, what I'm just never going to allow, is it to just be swept under the rug. You know what I mean? Like, well, since we just never talked about it, like, we'll pretend like it doesn't exist, And I feel like and maybe that's just me, like the whole, like, Raquel, we got to talk about this, right? And like that's just what I'm thinking about. Like, that was always my biggest worry, right? Like, you'd hear stories of people who have, gotten divorced, and it was because, man, like, something happened 15 years ago, and like it would still come up, and never fully got resolved. And I don't know, it's just something to me is like, can't I feel like I just cannot let that happen. So even if I don't know how to say this, but like, even if I'm not the one who needs to apologize, I'm gonna be the one who, like, well, we need to talk, like, you know what I mean? Just because we can't just pretend like it never happened.
Just to nudge her into apologizing.
So
All
on that topic, so two things real quick.
Okay.
One, a pastor of ours in Rhode Island, he talked about it. He said there is no right in a relationship, because if the husband is right and the wife is wrong, both of them lose, because at a situation, one of them is being proven or suggested that they were wrong in something. So the faster way you get it to resolution is there is no winner, right? There's really two losers if you're having to struggle with that. And then the other thing, because I see the chat kind of blowing up, I believe, the question was around, how do you feel? So foundationally, that's how we started, Onita and I, that the husband is the band around the family. So for my answer, for my family, that is how we feel. It may be different for others, but, I was answering based on, how Onita and I deal with that. So just wanted to, because I don't necessarily, I know Sandra said she disagrees, but I think really she just feels differently about her situation. It's not, I don't think it's an agree or disagree. It's just she and Tommy do something differently than Onita and I do it. So I just want to make sure we address that, because I don't think it's a right or wrong answer. It's just what applies to each family.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But I think that the thread that ran through everyone's answer was that as the head, they do feel a responsibility to make sure that this happens. So in some places, the wife may say, oh, well, I'm the one who did it, I'm going to go talk to him. Well, now we're resolving it. But if there's no, like, if that movement isn't happening, everyone seemed to feel like, oh yeah, we need to make sure that move happens.
Yeah. I think the key though is sometimes you know it needs to happen, but somebody's not being proactive to make it happen, right? And,
Mhm.
that's why that was my example of I
Right.
knew I had done something wrong, but I'm sitting there with silent treatment. And the
Mhm.
growth of the relationship shows that no, you need to address that right away. So
Mhm. Mhm.
All right.
So good.
Well, we're gonna take a turn now. Here's the question. I'm gonna start with Victor, then go to Ben and Tommy. What were you taught about sex growing up, and how did that impact your marriage, positively or negatively now?
So growing up in New York, I was taught that you're supposed to have as much sex as possible. You got picked on if you wasn't having sex. First, I wasn't raised by my dad, but when he started to come back into my life around 15, his first question he asked me was, "Are you a virgin?"
Mm.
And it was kind of um, if you are, shame on you. That type of question. So definitely with Onita as my partner, we've grown together in changing what I thought it was to what it really is. But yeah, I think growing up, it was kind of like you should have been doing it. I don't know if it's a city thing versus like a up north thing versus a down south, probably the same thing. But that living in the projects, you didn't have much else to do. You talk to a girl, your friends told you lies about their experiences. You then tried to keep up with them and
Mhm.
have some of your own stories and experiences to share. So, that was kind of my introduction to it
And
from a young age, 10
how
or
did
11
that
years old.
impact you once you got married and it was like legal sex? How
Mhm.
did that impact you?
It did not. No. I like I said, I felt like the guys was lying anyway. But it was still kind of like in New York, everybody caught a fish this big, right? So every story was always embellished a little bit.
Right.
But it wasn't until I started dating Onita and we talked about the expectations and things like that. Then when we got married and how it evolved. So yeah, it was different, but I think it helped be able to have the conversations because it wasn't brand new. As again, I have many friends who were raised at Venice, and I talked to them and they didn't talk about it at all, until they became adults and stuff. So my situation was different than that. But I think we ended at the same point that we got married to our spouses, and that decision, those choices, then took a different life of its own to basically define what it meant and then set expectations. Now, the set expectations part is still being worked through, but that we can talk about that at another time.
Okay. Yeah, that another time's coming right back around. All right. Get ready for that. Ben?
Yeah, so my parents did something that I guess might be considered controversial, if because people would be like, that's too young. But I was in either first or second grade where my parents sat me down and were like, this is how it works. Like, and it was like strictly like anatomy and physiology. Like it wasn't like, so I went to school and like, in like fifth grade, I think it was fifth grade, and I went to an Adventist school. So this might also, I didn't think it was controversial, but I learned later that it was super controversial. In fifth grade, we had a sex ed class.
Oh yeah. No. Went to an Adventist school. That's definitely not how it
I
goes.
listen, I was raised in Orlando, Florida, and like I didn't realize that like I mean, whatever. I I didn't realize like Orlando was like normal, and then you get out and you hear all like the crazy stories of like Adventism, like very oppressive, and I was like, wow,
Mhm.
that just wasn't my experience growing up, like, So again,
Wow.
and then in fifth grade, again, it was just strictly like, hey guys, like you guys are in the next few years are gonna, your hormones are gonna change, and like you gotta, we're gonna educate you so you don't like go crazy. So, strictly A and P again. But then once those hormones kicked in, I think, you start going to the movies and watching
Mhm.
TV, and like for me, by the time I got married, I had this like expectation in my mind, and then immediately, not immediately, but like went through a period of like disappointment because I'm like, this is not what I thought it was gonna be.
Mhm.
I want my money back, you know, and but it
That's good.
so it was like, you know, this expectation was like way up here, and then the reality set in, and then kind of realizing like, yo, we are humans, and this is not Hollywood, and finding beauty moving on, and realizing like, oh, so this is what it's supposed to be like, and then going back and seeing those same movies and being like, this would never work. This is not realistic at all. So
That is hilarious. Tommy.
yeah, we found a lot of beauty in it now. Yeah, we love it.
For me, I'd have to say I was self-taught. My parents didn't talk about it at all. I wasn't. First of all, I wasn't always. I haven't always been Adventist. I came up in a Baptist church, and it was a little different. But my mother and father never talked about it because my brother and I would always say, "I wonder if if they even have sex because they ain't talk about it and none of that." And in school, now you got to understand. When I was in high school, I was like, my nickname was Donut. I was a fat kid that just stood at the corner of the school. I was real smart, but the girls, young ladies, be like, "You cute, but you too fat," that type of thing. So I never had that exposure. I went to the military. I came back home. I was 100 pounds lighter, and I was getting back at everybody that gave that to me. You know what I mean? But I didn't know what I was doing. I was still It wasn't. It was almost like a game. I wasn't even in the emotional part of it at all. But as when you find that person, then it's all of it. You know what I mean? It's emotional. It's the whole thing. It's a whole package rather than being just out there to conquer. And you get the stories. Everybody tell you what you should be doing. As Victor said, you're supposed to be. And I thought I was somebody coming along. I had hair back then, and it was considered good. I was cute and all that kind of good stuff. So but that's not what it's about more.
Any challenges?
But yeah.
And how did that impact you when you got married to Sandra? I know you were married before, but how did it?
It was different. We our sex life and the way we communicated with each other was different. It was genuine. It was all that I thought it would be. We don't always connect on the same page all the time because sometimes I'm ready, sometimes you're not, and sometimes vice versa type thing. But we got a happy medium right now. We're good. So it works. Yeah. So yeah, and that developed over time too. So, yeah.
The narrative out in the dating world is that after you get married, sex stops. It's just kind of monotonous and routine. And if you get it at all, and men are always wanting it, and women don't want it, and they got headaches, and what's true. I know you can only talk about your life, but you have friends that are married too, and I'm sure you all talk about these things. What is actually true? Because I think personally, I believe we know that the enemy of our souls is always trying to destroy relationships and family and marriage. And so when he can put the narrative that marriage sucks and sex is no good once you get married, that people out in the streets doing the thing and having fun and not wanting to. But what is the truth? Let's bust some myths today around sex in marriage. Ben, then Victor, then Tommy.
All right. So it sounds like two unique I have a different perspective, right? So like, uh, Raquel was my first, and that was just, let me say it like this: that wasn't for lack of trying. That was the Holy Spirit being like, "Why don't you sit back down?" And just stopping me a bunch of different times, right? But I look back at that. I look back at that now, and I'm I think this fear, that fear, specific fear of like, oh, it just gets so boring. It's like the same person all the time. It's like, well, I don't know. There's people and they've already crossed that line, and like, listen, like God's grace is for you, and you are no different to Him. But I think there's still like, for me, I don't think I'm ever gonna have that thing where it's like, man, I just remember when it was like a different person every month, or or a week or whatever. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything because I never, experienced that. So that's something that, like, if people want to talk to me about, like, I just have to recognize, like, I don't understand that specific struggle that they're trying to come to terms with. And then the second thing, and honestly, I was like, this is probably gonna open up a whole can of worms. But part of mitigating the expectations, where I was like, bro, like, why do I feel like I'm the only one who like wants to do this? When we first, got married, realized, like, oh man, it was like three. It's like, I want to, like, almost just recently. I don't even think, I know I definitely didn't, but I don't even think Raquel realized the effect that like the birth control pill was having on her. Like, in terms of like her just being like this pill makes me, like, you are disgusting to me, like, get away from me. And it was the pill, you know what I mean? Because it, I started doing research, like, oh, like it messes with your brain, like, that's crazy. So that was something that, like, we're still, like, she doesn't want to take it anymore, and I was like a champion of it, like, to get off of it if it's messing with, like, once we realized like how much it was messing with her brain, I was like, get off that thing. Because it's I don't want to say, I'm not a doctor, I don't want to say like it's not good for you, but like, as we were looking through, like, side effects may include, and it's like, like, just, I don't know if you should be taking that, I don't know. So that was one of the things, like, when it came to, again, just mitigating expectations, I thought it was something wrong with me or the marriage. Like, man, like, I must be the worst. But it was the pill, you know what I mean? Like, it really just made everything change. So,
Victor.
So I don't think any of those things you said are true as far as what the outsiders are looking in saying about the married couple. So I guess the best way for me to say it is, if you and your wife, if me and Oneida are starting a race, we both need to finish the race, and then sex is much more pleasurable. If I'm finishing the race and Oneida's at the starting point, it's not going to be pleasurable. So you have to, back to expectations, you have to define. You have to be comfortable enough for the man and the woman to share, hey, you're actually not as good as you may think. Here are some of the things. Here are some of the things that you need to think about. Maybe you need to go and exercise a little more. Maybe you need to take care of your body. Maybe you shouldn't eat those type of foods. So, men, I will tell you, I think I can speak for all men on this. That is probably the biggest thing for us. We take that very seriously, and we want to. It's only me and my wife, so I want to be the most attractive, the sexiest, the stud to my wife, right? Who else is supposed to be besides me?
Right.
So women do a great job of managing our expectations and managing our egos. So it may be a Tuesday night where it's like, hey, can we just talk tonight? Because I have some things I want to share. When you do these things, it actually turns me off. And we know, as husbands, we know sex doesn't start in the bedroom. Sex starts in the morning, when, kind of Ben said, when you didn't make the bed. That's a strike right there. I
Yeah.
came downstairs and the sink was full of dishes.
Oh my goodness.
You know, so I come home with a fresh haircut, and it's like, okay, but what happened to the trash that's sitting over there and the flies are flying around? And now you're talking about it's night by night. Am I gonna get lucky tonight? Heck no, you're not getting lucky tonight. So all those things lead into the woman's perspective on sex. Whereas us guys, like, you know, they talk about it. I know when I was in my 20s, it was like every 2 minutes we're thinking about it, right? And then, you know, and then you know, it's probably in my 40s, I'm still thinking about it every 2 minutes. But I do all the pre-work that goes along with it now. So hopefully Onita's actually the initiator, because that's another thing that men say, oh, I'm always the one initiating. And, you know, she runs upstairs and gets into bed, and I just heard her on the phone talking, but when I walked through the door, she didn't close the eyes, the cell phone's over there, and it's like she's sleeping. But you know, Onita gives me a lot of feedback, and those examples about the bed, and those are all things that she said to me that, okay, now when I do make the bed, I'm standing on the side like, okay, I made the bed. Okay, you finally made the bed. Okay, great.
No, I made the bed.
You know, we're simple like that. So, but it gets back to, if the experience for both parties are enjoyable, it will happen more. If it's not enjoyable, then, you know, just like is there anything in life we like to do that's not enjoyable? Because, you know, going to work, for example, it's not always enjoyable, but we have to do it. In those situations, you don't have to do it. And then you add all those variables, like 4 kids, both of us work full-time jobs, both of us are in ministry, and all the other things. There's a lot of variables to then get up for to do the act, and then for it to not be enjoyable for both people. It's like, well, I'm gonna pass on that because I already know what that experience is going to be. So that's I don't think what the descriptions about marriage sex is, but I think you got to do the work to make it enjoyable so it doesn't turn into the routine or not at all.
Oh,
Well said. All of that.
I love that. Tommy.
Yeah. Well, for me, and my family, my wife and I, washing dishes is foreplay. You know what I'm saying? It really is. And I wash dishes, and it does something, you know. And before, when we were first married, it was kind of spontaneous, and we were still learning each other, you know. But at the end of the day, I want my wife to be pleased, you know, and that's the biggest part of it, not just because I'm a man and I'm just supposed to be ready all the time, you know. And there are times that we are just intimate. It doesn't necessarily have to be sex, just to hold one another and lay there and talk and just cuddle. You know what I mean? It turns it everything kind of evolves as you go along, you know, and it may end up being one of those wild nights, and it may be one of those nights where I fall asleep and I'm snoring on you, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, you know, but the thing is, it's the comfort, it's being comfortable at home with the person you want to be with. You know what I mean? So it's no rush, and okay, so not every day you do it. You have intimate, you have sex, but just the loving piece of it, you know, it kind of evolves. So I'm good, but then when it's been a little too long, then I'll say something, or she'll say something. You know what I mean? Same difference, you know. Like, are we not going to? You know what I mean? Yeah, okay, you're right. And so we shift and go in a different direction with it. But yeah, it's fun because, you know, before kids, and once the kids came, then you lock the door and you had to choose the right time. You gotta get everybody to sleep, and you worked all day and all those things. You know, now mine are grown, but you know, my kids said, my daughter always said, I didn't think y'all did that. I was like, yeah, well, that's how you got here, you know.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but yeah.
No, that's so good. I know that statistics say that a majority, I don't know the number of women even in marriage, are not sexually satisfied. And part of that is because they are not able to communicate, or they don't feel like they have a safe place to communicate that to their husband because of the ego thing. I mean, it's a hard thing. I mean, I probably wouldn't say it the way Victor said it, but I'm like, not as good as you think you are.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Kept that a little bit.
Yeah.
But that having to, communication is about that too. And so being able to communicate and explore, because even I think it was a gynecologist, she was saying that even women don't really understand their own bodies. And so you all have a lifetime to explore that, what makes you feel good, what doesn't. I like this, and in a worldly perspective, there are a lot of women who say that they want a man with experience. Even virgins say they want a man with experience. And I'm just like, that's so ridiculous, because he doesn't have experience with you.
Yeah.
Right.
People, and you're gonna do some things that he's done with other people that you're gonna be like, don't ever do that again. And there are other things he would. So it's like, you don't have experience, no matter how many times you've done it. You don't have an experience until you're with that person to know what they like and what they don't like. So that's my single thoughts about that.
But it all goes back to the fact that it's not talked about early enough, and it's not talked about in the right context, and it is either it is weaponized or villainized or demonized, or it's like, don't make eye contact. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's no logical in between. If God created it, he did, and it's a beautiful thing, it is, between a husband and a wife, then why aren't we having transparent conversation about it? We talk about everybody's role. We talk about what the husband's supposed to do. We talk about the wife's supposed to do. We talk about how to raise these kids. Talk about who's going to be the provider. All those things, but we don't talk about that act that is meant to bind us, to bring us together, to keep us together. It's like, nobody wants to have a conversation about it that makes any sense. And so we're human. We're going to write our own stories. We're going to write our own narratives about it, or we're going to go out in the street and try to figure it out on our own, because from the male perspective, they don't want to come to the relationship. Female perspective, it's just like, you can't do but so much, because then you got all types of tags, or names associated with you. It's just that Satan has turned it into the exact opposite of what God intended it to be.
Pleasure.
And that's what so many couples struggle.
Yep.
Right. And we've had this conversation so many times, like for me with my married friends, where they say, when it comes to sex in our marriage, we go in not knowing what to do, not knowing how to handle ourselves. And you guys kind of spoke on that as well. And Victor, you and Onita have said a number of times that when you guys go to marriage seminars and they're discussing all of these different topics, that does not come up, right? So you have women who are going into marriages feeling unprepared, and because we're not men, we're guessing maybe there are some of you all that don't quite feel prepared either, right? So you guys have just shared some really great information about your experiences. But if you were to go to one of these seminars, what is it that you would want a young man who desires marriage? What would you want him to know, or you feel like he should know going into marriage?
That's a
great question.
Yeah, so I think communication is the biggest key, not necessarily being afraid of these topics. So when we go, Onita and I go to these things, I really would like to leave when they don't talk about sex. It's so important in marriages. I'm like, it's not a room full of single Adventists talking about sex. It's married people. So my kids may have thought of Onita and I have had sex 4 times, but that's not the case. And nobody's going to get it perfect every time, right? And that's where the conversations happen. When the expectations aren't met, there should be a conversation. Now, it shouldn't be right after it's done. hey, let me tell you what you didn't do well.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
that's a bruise to the ego. But like I said, women, you guys know how to naturally work things in, especially, when you feel like, okay, I'm not going to hurt his ego, but I can't keep doing this because I'm not getting any personal satisfaction. So I think, the male needs to also not make the female feel uncomfortable. Like, please share, be completely transparent so I can understand, versus, why would you want me to do that? Well, I ain't doing that. It's like, that's why I feel that some of those conversations should happen before the marriage. You don't want to get into the marriage and find out, well, one person said that they would never do that. So now you're in a lifelong relationship with a person that you want something to happen and they said they'll never do it.
Right.
That's an excellent point, Vic.
I love
Excellent
that.
point.
And that's why part of the reason I'm asking you those questions right now, because we're talking to a bunch of people. I mean, there are married people on here, but there are single people who are watching that will watch. And it's like, what are questions how do we even prepare for that? How do you prepare, whether you're a virgin or born again virgin or not a virgin? How do you prepare for sex in your marriage with your husband? What should you, or your wife, what should you be thinking about? What should you be doing? Is there anything practical that you should be doing? Certainly there's always spiritual things, but how do you think about this, Renee?
No, and I just want to add to that question. What should you not do? For example, the porn and the dirty magazines, or listening to your boys in the streets who are telling big fish stories,
I really don't think you should talk to anybody but your spouse.
Yeah.
I think,
well, no. I'm talking about if you husbands are talking to men, young guys who are interested in being married, what would you say to them, to the young guy who wants to be where you are one day?
Yeah, that's what I was answering. It was pretty much don't talk to the friends, don't go to the internet. Talk to your spouse, like, even to the point where, let's say both people are virgins. That's even better, because now there is no expectation of what was done with you before, right? You're discovering it together at the same time, and you're growing with it. So you can say, hey, honey, that really made me feel good, what you did there. So we should incorporate that, versus somebody coming in more experienced saying, well, I did this every time and everybody liked it. So if you don't like it, it's something wrong with you. So I think there shouldn't be any outside conversations. The conversation should be between the two people that are married.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love that.
On.
Ben and Tommy, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, especially like if we're talking stereotypically like younger men, like, who are thinking about getting married, I would just beseech them, like, get a hold of, like, if you're struggling with a porn addiction, get a hold of that, like, go to therapy or something, because, like, it is just like I said, there's Hollywood and then there's that, like, that is the most unrealistic, and so, like, if that's where you're getting all your information, like, you're gonna be so depressed, like like, a lot of times I feel like it gets approached from, like, it alters your brain, and, like, all of that is true, but I don't know. My angle is, like, you're gonna be so disappointed if you keep looking at this, like, and hope maybe that would work.
It distorts your expectations to a level that's just even beyond Hollywood or anything else. And people's bodies really don't do that. But go ahead. Tommy.
All of that stuff is staged. All of it's it's action and cut, that type of thing, and let's do that again because it didn't look right when we did it or whatever. None of that is real life. You have to, now you and your wife can explore, to get to know one another better as far as what it is you actually do and don't like, and then talk about those things before you actually try them. You know what I mean? 'Cause you can get dejected real quick. Be like, "What are you doing?" But so, so you know what I mean? Yeah,
Sounds like you all agree on that point.
yeah. And then you find that sweet spot, what works, and then even from day to day, it may be something different, but it's us, and we can we can talk about it again, like Vic said, not right after, but maybe the next day or the next time before we even go that way. We can talk about those things. But yeah,
Right, because exploration is fun. I'm not making any suggestions here, but
Mhm.
exploration is fun, and it's like if we think about it from the perspective of serving and giving, and making sure
Yes.
that both people are mutually satisfied, then all the exploration becomes just sexy,
Yes.
as
Yeah.
opposed to like a barrier to satisfaction. Because I mean, to spend 20, 30, 35, 40 years with somebody and not have satisfaction is just like, yeah, let's just stay single. Thank you. But because that would make a sister mad after my whole adult life. Sister won't be upset about that one. So I don't need you to take out the trash. I need you to.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna
Okay.
come down to bring this to a close now in the next few minutes. And has divorce ever been an option?
Oh, I to speak to that. It's never been an option for me. Um, like I said, when I met her, I vowed I wouldn't get married again because of what I had been through before. Um, but if I was to get married, it's for life, and you had to find that right lifelong partner. That we have had disagreements, we've had differences of opinion about a lot of things, but the ultimate thing is God put us together. We're in this for the long haul. And I was asked in a relationship seminar one time, what is the ultimate role of the husband and the wife? And my answer was to help each other get to heaven. You know what I mean? That is what it's about, and that's what we work towards. And so all of those disagreements are just growing pains as we go along through this thing. I ain't going nowhere, and I pray she doesn't. And I was always the one that said if anybody messed up, it would be me. But but I work on me all the time. Yeah, I already know. Because of who I married, and she just, I don't get on, and we don't talk about that a lot, man. I love my wife, and she's that person for me. She is, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And we're gonna grow old together, and we're gonna take care of each other if we need to, and just ride this thing all the way out. I don't no divorce. Nah.
I love it.
Love that.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing more from me. When we were in marriage counseling, the pastor said the first 7 years are the toughest time, the rocky period. We're on year 24, so yeah, we way past that. So no, a divorce would crush our family, and that is very important. We don't want. I'm big on be about it, not speaking about it. So like, Onita and I, we made sure we went to graduate school so we can say to our kids, this is our expectation, and they can't say back to us, but you didn't do it, so why are you expecting us to do it? So our expectation is you have all the communications, you pick the right spouse, and that's going to be the spouse for the rest of your life. So that I think Tommy summed it all up, but that's just an additional point that I wanted to make.
I love it.
So, man, I could talk about this for a little bit. Our first year of marriage was really, really, really hard. Like this like 7 year itch that people always talk about. I feel like we did that like right away. And there were like so many things that I think contributed to that. So like number one, like I said, our entire relationship, dating, engagement was all long distance. So like the first time that we were with each other all day, every day was when
Mm-hmm.
we got married. Then, like 2 weeks later, we moved from sunny Florida to cloudy and cold Michigan. We
Oh,
didn't
wow.
know a thing about seasonal depression. So we went through
Mm.
that first winter,
Mm.
didn't know about vitamin D, didn't know about the little happy lamps. We became irritable and, like we were both gaining weight and were just tired all the, you know what I mean? Just, and
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know what it was. And so, like, in Michigan, if you've never been, from like October to about May, you don't see the sun. And growing up in Florida, I learned like I need the sun, and so does Raquel. And then another thing, Raquel had never left home, right? Like I had gone to college away, so I had kind of had experience, but so then she's struggling with homesickness, and like then both of us were in school full time. It's like so much stuff. And then again, mitigating the expectations of sex and being newly married and just all of these things came to a head and like we were very like we, I think if we were being honest, I think Raquel and I were like, yo, like, did we low key make a mistake? And I remember distinctly, I went and I talked to a friend of mine who had gotten married like, ah, man, how much longer before us? Maybe like a year or so. And like, I just like confided in him and I was like, my brother, like, is it always this hard? And I remember he said something to me one time. He was like, yeah, like sometimes, like when I come home, like I'm trying to remember what he said, but it was basically like sometimes I want to eat this, but then she made this, and I wanted to like strangle him because I was like, dude, like
That's not a
what the
real
heck?
problem. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was like, no, I'm talking about like deep existential stuff, my guy. And I was like, you know, but what it,
mac and cheese.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, so two things happened that made an insane difference for us. Number one was in June, the sun came back out. You
Mm.
know what I mean? And we were like, oh, I love you again. Like this is like. But then the second thing that happened was Raquel went back. She came back here to Orlando. She was like working with her family for. It was a little bit like I was by myself for weeks while she was down here doing stuff. And it was one of these things, and I remember talking about it with a friend later once. Like we obviously we worked through it, and we've never been better. But like, I remember realizing this moment is like, listen, you can read about skydiving, you can watch videos about skydiving, you can talk to somebody who skydives, but until you strap on a parachute and jump out of a plane, you have no idea what you're doing. You know,
Mm. Mhm.
uh, and that to me really like I felt like I had read all the books about marriage. I had talked to all my married friends, and we had done the counseling, we'd done everything. But it's like until you're actually married and you
Mm.
move to Michigan and you don't see the sun and like all this stuff, like until like you are literally like you have 53 cents in your bank account and then you get paid the next day, like until you're struggling, like you're going through all this stuff, like you don't know what you're talking about until you've actually done it. And like I said, like Raquel and I have been through a lot, and then going through this whole, like I'm going through a career change because, so many different things. And like now Raquel is working and, you know, I'm, we're living with her family right now, and, there's a part of me that's just like, man, like what in the world? Like, I'm going to be 30 and like our life just got flipped upside down. And, um, but all of these things have like really forged Raquel and I instead of like breaking us. And
Oh, I love that.
you know,
Yeah.
and so to come all the way full circle, like, sorry,
That's okay.
come all the way full
Got
circle,
you. We
like,
got you.
I, I, we always talked from the beginning, like, divorce is not on the table, but there were moments there where it was like super hard, and we were like, oh shoot, like, what have we done?
Mhm.
But that's why, you marry somebody who is mature enough to like actually walk through those things with you and talk about them, even if it takes her 48 hours, to get her thoughts, and like if Raquel, if it had been anybody else, I don't know. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
being a pastor, and I mean, I've met pastors who were like, we'll never get divorced, and then they do, and like, things like that, and like, I just don't know. If it had been anybody else, I really don't know what would have happened. I want to talk a big game, like I would never do it, but there were moments where it was like, this is really, really, really hard,
mhm.
and if Raquel and I couldn't have come together and like work through it, it might have happened, you know.
Mhm.
Well, that's all. I mean, I think that is so valuable. This conversation has been amazing.
Yes.
The transparency that Ebony referenced it, Onita references, people in the chat has been amazing, and we really appreciate it. But I think that that's what's needed for people who are watching, or people who are married who are watching, who they might be struggling. They
Yeah.
like, yeah, we got all that situation going on, and I'm just really tired of her, or I'm tired of him. Like I'm tired of fighting. I don't have any peace. And how do you break? How do you walk through that together? I think you all have given some great tips. So my
Mhm.
final question to you all is comes from this perspective. A lot of the conversations that's happening outside of the church, I don't know about inside of the church, but outside of the church, is that marriage only benefits the woman. Men don't want to be married. There's passport bros trying to go over. There's pill bros who are like, women are evil and all the problems are related to them. And, we just gonna, go out and just, have sex with them, but we're not trying to marry. Marriage just doesn't benefit men at all. But then there's the 1%ers who are married who just like, I couldn't be who I am if I didn't have a wife. What are, in your opinion, your three benefits of marriage for both parties, but particularly for men? Okay. Okay.
Call on somebody.
Go,
Go
Tom.
for it.
You
Oh,
start because you've been doing this for the longest, so that you probably got the most benefits.
Yeah. The biggest thing is you got somebody that is that the voice of reason. That men from the Venus Mars thing, we don't always have the greatest ideas about stuff. We'll have some ideas. We'll, what I'm saying, there's some things that ways we want to do things. Yeah, and you need somebody to help that pulls the reins and kind of lets you know that I don't think that's such a good idea, because we don't think about that all the time. And it helps to keep us grounded. It helps to keep us on track as far as what we do. I'm somewhat of a procrastinator. My wife gently lets me know that there's some things that we need to, that we talked about and we need to get on, because if not, then sometimes you just let it go. And another benefit is I got a happy home. I come home and I don't. Some people sit in their cars for hours when they get home because they don't want to go indoors. You know what I'm saying? But I love getting home and getting out of my car, and my wife loves being at home, and I love being here with her. And we talked earlier about the work thing. We were taught you work, you take care of your family, and if that means you got to be gone for a while, because that's what I saw my father do, But then she understands that, and well, like I say, that's the holding on to the reins thing. She'll let me know, you do need to be at home sometimes. I was working driving buses, and I was gone out of state for long periods of time, and I was already retired from one job. She was like, "You didn't retire to be gone all the time."
Mhm.
And I was like, "You know what? You're absolutely right." So I don't know if that's two or three things, but that's the biggest thing for me.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that about her. I don't always take criticism very well. I'm getting better at it, and it's not even criticism anymore. It's a kind of a loving, just
Mhm.
would you think about, look at it this way, you know what I mean, that type of thing. So it helps to keep you centered, and she makes our house a home. I would be living in squalor. You know what I'm saying? And she makes our house a home, and looks, and the way that it's people come into our house and like, this feels like home, and it does. And
Mm.
I'm happy, and I'm thankful for that. All them guys that say they're happy out there being single and all that stuff, they're happy when they're out there in the club and they're out there hollering at everybody else, and they go home to an empty house and then they cry. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm happy with that, but nah.
All right. I love that. I love that. Victor, you're up next. Almost
Yeah.
24 years.
Okay. Yeah. So, no one on Nita for 27 years. The most important thing that she's impacted my life on was she introduced me to the Lord. I believe that is the foundation of all the success that we've had. Everything that we talked about on that first call, we've greatly exceeded all those goals. I don't think I would have made that. I don't think I would be where I'm at today as the man that I am. I know I wouldn't be on this podcast if it wasn't for Onita, because I was truly in my own world. I didn't think I needed relationships. She's taught me that. She is, as you guys all know, she's a lovely person, and she tries to build. I don't think she leaves a person better than after they've met her. So I've had the benefit of having that person in my life for 27 years, and then obviously the family that we have, right? Our kids, I see them every night when I'm not traveling for work, and I really take enjoyment of that. I take enjoyment of shaping lives that I can say, hey, we are not all dysfunctional, and two parents can be in the home and get along with each other and raise kids, and teach them valuables that a lot of the outside world said our families don't have anymore. The values are gone because everybody's on devices and the internet is teaching our kids. So I would say those are the three things that I would say is a benefit from having Onita in my life. And just before you pass it over to Ben, as we talked about earlier today, talking to younger versions, I've heard Ben say two things that I knew was very close to my heart in my 20s, and it's about finance. Ben talked about loans at one point, and he said 53 cents. And I just want to say to Ben, from some advice, when I was in my 20s, I thought that I needed to pay every financial commitment I had because I didn't want to take debt. I'm telling you, in my 40s, you're always going to have some type of financial commitment that you're trying to pay. So don't prioritize that in your life. Try more to enjoy your life, and just know that there's going to be financial commitments that you're going to have to pay probably for the rest of your life. So don't spend too much time, trying to say, I'm not where I need to be financially, because you will receive the blessings and then you'll be looking back saying, why did I think about that so much at that point?
I love
Absolutely.
that. I love
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm here for all of that. Man, I don't know two or three things, but when I think of Raquel, I think of God said, like, I need to make a helper, right, for Adam, and like I mean, Lorraine, you saw Raquel, like
Mhm.
how much
Yeah, she's
when,
all.
like, as I started to like deteriorate, she picked it up. You know what I mean? And so by all outward appearances, like nothing had changed, but it's because Raquel was helping me. Like she's like holding me up, you know? And so, man, like, I don't know, what did you say? The passport bros or the red pill or whatever, like, listen, you need help. We all need help. You know what I mean? And if you can find somebody who will help you and love you and look at you the same at the end of the day, like, do that.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. And Renee had a question, and I think that Victor kind of answered it in her question, and I'll make it more of a statement. Maybe, how important is having a community of men in your circle? And just that little interaction that Ben and Victor just had just says how it's important, because Raquel could say that 150,000 times and he will not hear it the same as he heard it from Victor, who he's never met before last night. And that's how important it is, you know, and they've all referenced each other. That's how important it is for men to have a community and for women to have a community. Women are easier with that, but for men to have a community, because often they, you know, it's the relationships that I've seen, the marriages that I've seen that have been challenging or problematic or just bad, it's often because the man doesn't have anybody that is in that circle that's giving him sound advice. He may have people, but he doesn't have a community of men that are actually lifting him up and telling him things like that and telling him, hey, you do need to go home a little bit. It's important to work, but it's also important to balance. You do have unrealistic expectations around this. Yeah. And so we want to be part of that community, but find a community wherever you are.
Right. And just, I asked that question just knowing the high rate of suicide and depression that men tend to experience because they feel like they have to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. And then there's a little bit of shame behind, you know, telling other people, you know, anything about your situation. So, you know, just to men who feel like they have to live, you know, as an island, I just really want them to know that there is a strong and huge benefit in having a community of positive, sound people and counsel in your life. So, yeah.
And I need to give context to that story I said where the guy was like, well, she just didn't make the food that I listen. 99.999% of the time he is on point. Like, that is my brother. He was just having an off day that day. Maybe I wasn't explaining myself well enough.
That's okay.
So I agree. No, like, you know, I have people that I can call, I can be real with, and like some of them have been my bosses, right? So like, interestingly enough, like when I was working at Andrews, I was working in the boys' dorm, or the men's residence hall. That's what we used to call it. And like those guys, they were like, so how old was I? I was like 23 at the time, and they were maybe like 33, 34. So it's like they're older than me, but they're not like so much older than me that it's like we're talking about two totally different things. Like, those guys poured into my life in a way that is like, I just feel like I can never repay them. Because they got it. I mean, they were living through the cold, the cloudiness too, and they had, you know, they were ahead of me, but not that far ahead of me. That was like the sweet spot, I feel like. And then I was in a position where like, then there was the undergrad, you know, and I was able to, so those guys are pouring into me, and I got to pour into the undergrad, you know, and that was important, because a lot of them were coming up with like, talk to me about like, how did you know with Raquel, and like tell me about Raquel, you know. It was great. So it's like, you got to get filled, and then you have to go fill somebody else.
That's right.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Well, thank you all very much. And I'm just going to share this. This seemed like the most appropriate scripture for you all at this time. Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord.
Yes.
And it sounds like you all have found a good thing and that the Lord has bestowed favor upon you. And for those of us who are single, we want to be a good thing that is found by the man of God that he has for us. I am beyond grateful for you all spending this time with us.
Yes.
And next week, your wives will be on, and pretty much we'll have the same conversation, and from their perspective, probably have a couple of different questions. But we are looking forward to that. And as we mentioned earlier, if you want to join us in Afterwise, that link is in the is in the comments. You can click it. I'll actually I'm gonna actually put it here again so that you can have it. You can click on that and you can join us. Hopefully that conversation, we know it's good, but hopefully it won't be that long. But just join us for however long you want to join us, because the after conversation is usually even better. Wives, you can come on. You have the links. You can come on and join us as well. We thank you for sticking with us. This has just been worth the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could spend 2 or 3 hours watching a movie. I'm not mad at you, but like we need to spend time being poured into learning how to build healthy relationships, because relationships, marriage, family, that's the foundation of our society. It's the foundation of our church. And a lot of us have broken homes and broken churches, and we know our society is broken because that foundation has been. So thank you all for bringing your wisdom to us personally, but also to the community.
Yes.
Thank you all for your comments, and until next time.
Thank you.
Choices.
Thank you.
You live, love, marry wiser. God bless you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
y'all.
Enjoy.